Hi, in this video we're going to look at partial waveforms. A partial waveform is wrapped around two advanced waveforms, and then it have its own three phase converters that can be fed into these two advanced waveforms that again have their own phase converters and value converters. Then the output from these two advanced waveforms is combined, and then it have its own three value converters that can even further change this combined waveform. So let's have a look how it appears in the software. I right click here and choose to create a partial waveform. And here you see you have an entire advanced waveform, waveform it, and again an entire advanced waveform 2 here. Then there is the split section, and down here you can resample what you have down here as a hand-drawn or a basic or advanced additive. You can load a partial from the database, or you can simply randomize everything. So let's try to make a very simple split waveform. So here, for example, we can dial in a sine, and here we can choose a triangle. Right now we only see the sine, and that's because the split section defaults to this value 100%, meaning we see 100% of the first advanced waveform. So in percent we can dial in, for example, 50. And now the first half is from our sine, and the last half is from our triangle. Right now we have selected a split type called 1-2, and that's mean we will see 50% of waveform 1 and then the last 50% of waveform 2. However, you can choose other split types. When we choose this 1-2-1, we still see 50% of each, but it's now split, so we see 25% of waveform 1. Then we see 50% from waveform 2, and then we see the last 25% from waveform 1 again. And choosing the last one, it's not very nice looking with this waveform, but we actually split it even further, but still we are shifting between waveform 1 and 2. Now you see the first part is from the sine. This part here near 90 degrees is from the triangle. Then we switch and have a part from the sine again, and then we see this small part from our triangle. And what we can do now is we have these sections where they overlap, and not that it have to be smooth, but if we want to do something about it, we can use this transition. Right now it defaults to 0%, and it means it'll abruptly switch from one waveform to the other. But we can dial in at different settings here. And right now it's set to linear. And you have different types of these split types. Instead of learning them, what I normally do is just I scroll my mouse wheel. This one is not too bad. This one I also like. In this case, I think I'll pick this one because it gives a nice transition. And also you can use that here. It's not so obvious to see. You have a point here that you can make more soft by introducing a transition. So basically, that's the whole idea about this partial waveform, is you have these two waveforms and you can dial in a split between them. If I clear everything, if you do this randomize, I'm afraid in most cases you'll not get useful waveforms, because with so much options that can be changed in many types, in many instances you'll get weird looking waveforms. These first are not too bad. This one you could dial up and DC, or probably just remove this one and you have a waveform you can use. But you get many of these weird results. Again, not that they are not useful at all. Instead of, I like this one actually. Instead of randomizing everything, you can simply randomize the first waveform. And then this one, the second waveform is untouched and the split section is untouched. So you can randomize a few times until you find something you like. And right now we are only seeing the right one. So instead of having to dial in 0% to see the full of the next one, you can simply swap 1 and 2. So I can press here to swap with this one with 1, or I can press here to swap this one with 2. The result will be the same. So now again I can randomize. Let's pick this one and then dial in our split of 50%. And the reason we see nothing here is because this second waveform had all its energy over here, and this was just a 0 line, so we swapped them again. And now we have this result. In a few cases, I will want to choose to use a partial waveform, even though I don't intend to use this second waveform and this split section. And that for that we'll have to go back to the diagram. Here you see these waveforms are self-contained. They have their own phase converters and value converters within the advanced waveform. So if you do anything within this advanced waveform to change the phase, that phase change will not be affected in the partial waveform. The partial waveform has its own phase converters. If you use these phase converters, this changed phase will be added to these two that can even change it further. But if you don't change the phase, that means when you come to the value converters, the phase will not have been changed, because all phase changes that are going on within these advanced waveforms are happening locally. It will not affect these one. And sometimes it can be hard to predict what will happen. So let's look at an example where I show how you can fix that using a partial waveform instead of an advanced waveform. Here we have a cleared partial waveform. We just use advanced waveform 1. We dial in a sine. And then we add 2 value converters, a frequency multiplier, and a compress. And as I've shown before, the order of these can change things. So right now we have it like this. And let's say I wanted to invert only the left side. And you would think that for that, it's simple. We choose an inverter. And then we just invert from 0% to 0 degrees to 180 degrees. But this was not what we expected to get. We only expected this side to be inverted and this one remain untouched. And the reason we don't get this desired result is because up here we have changed the phase. The phase is no longer going steadily from 0 to 360 degrees as it normally does, because it have been changed up here. So that means it's the changed phase we're defining down here. So there's different way to do to fix this issue. We could have made this an advanced waveform, and then we could just resample it into a hand-drawn, and then these things would be applied into the hand-drawn, and then we could change it. But also we can just leave it as it is here, and then add this inversion here instead. Sorry, not here. Here instead. Because in this case, the inverter will then be unaffected of these changes. We haven't made any changes to the phase locally for the partial. It's only here that the phase have been changed, and that only affect the waveform 1. So now when I dial in 180 degrees, we get the effect we want. Even though I said this one, it's not active because we're not using that. So for me, that's a reason to sometime use a partial, even though I'm not changing anything to the waveform 2 or defining a split. So looking at that illustration from the manual, that when you get into a situation where you feel that you cannot get the result you want from using the value converters, the options are either to resample into a hand-drawn or simply use the value converter of the split. I seldom use these phase converters here. If I want to do something, I normally dial it in here. Had I been using a split, and did I need both of them to have the same frequency modifier with the same values, I could have dialed it in here. But you need to know, doing that, you will start to influence the phases for these value converters. So that's the reason. Even though if I needed multiplier with the same value, I would simply dial it in for each of these, knowing that I could use these as I want to. So basically, this is the partial waveform.